The system that we think China should adopt in terms of a political system, Western democracy, is actually failing in a fairly profound way.
Are democracies really the best for economic growth? It is a question that has been debated for centuries. In the United States, democracy has been seen as a positive factor for economic growth, with the economy growing steadily over the past few centuries. But in Russia, democracy has been seen as a negative factor for economic growth, with economic growth stagnating since the fall of the Soviet Union. So, is democracy bad for economic growth? In this video, we'll look at the pros and cons of democracy as a form of government and its impact on economic growth. We'll also analyze different examples of how democracy or the lack of it has affected economic growth in various countries. This video is divided into 4 parts. 1. Arguments for democracy being bad for economic growth. Lack of government stability. Political instability. Poor government policies. 2. Arguments against democracy being bad for economic growth. Increased quality of life. Freedom and equality. Strengthened human rights. 3. Examples. Examples for pro-democracy, Hong Kong, Israel. Examples for pro-authoritarian, Singapore, Japan, China, South Korea. 4. What really matters. Inclusive institutions, low government corruption, incentives for innovation, peace, etc. are more important factors for economic growth than the type of government. Arguments for democracy being bad for economic growth. We'll discuss 3 main points: lack of government stability, political instability, and poor government policies. Lack of government stability. Democracies are often characterized by frequent changes in the ruling party or government, which can lead to a lack of predictability and stability in the economy. These frequent changes can disrupt the business environment, causing uncertainty and leading to slower economic growth. Political instability. Democracies are often highly politicized, which can lead to major disagreements between different political factions. These disagreements can cause political gridlock, preventing the government from taking the action needed to promote economic growth. Poor government policies. Democracies often have a tendency to favor short-term benefits over long-term gains. This can mean that the government makes decisions that are beneficial in the short term, but can be detrimental to economic growth in the long term. So, to conclude, democracy can be bad for economic growth. Lack of government stability, political instability, and poor government policies can all lead to slower economic growth. Arguments against democracy being bad for economic growth. Democracies are often associated with higher standards of living and improved quality of life. Democracy provides citizens with access to a wide range of resources, including clean water, healthcare, education, and better infrastructure. This can lead to a stronger economy and, as a result, economic growth. Freedom and equality. Democracy ensures that citizens have the right to participate in the decision-making process, allowing them to have a say in how their country is run. This can lead to increased economic growth, as citizens are able to voice their opinions on economic policies. Democracy also ensures that everyone is treated equally under the law, allowing for fairer economic policies. Better human rights. Democracies provide citizens with legal protection and fundamental human rights, such as the freedom of speech, the freedom to practice their religion, and the right to a fair trial. These rights are essential for citizens to prosper and can contribute to economic growth. Freedom to innovate. Democracies provide citizens with the freedom to create and innovate, which can lead to more innovative products and services. This can help to create new jobs and industries, which can contribute to economic growth. So, to conclude, democracy does not appear to be bad for economic growth. Increased quality of life, freedom and equality, strengthened human rights, and the freedom to innovate can all contribute to a stronger economy and, as a result, economic growth. Examples for pro-democracy, Israel and Hong Kong. Israel is a small country with a population of just 8.6 million. Despite its small size, Israel has achieved remarkable economic growth. In the 1950s, Israel was a poor country with a per capita GDP of only $1,500. However, it has since grown to become an upper-middle income country with a per capita GDP of $40,000. Israel's remarkable economic growth has been largely due to its embrace of democracy and free markets. Since its independence in 1948, Israel has been a vibrant democracy with regular elections and a vibrant civil society. Additionally, Israel has opened its markets to foreign investment and trade, allowing the country to benefit from global economic growth. The case of Hong Kong is also instructive. Hong Kong is a small city-state with a population of 7.4 million. In the 1950s, Hong Kong was a poor country with a per capita GDP of only $1,300. However, it has since grown to become one of the wealthiest countries in the world, with a per capita GDP of $60,000. Hong Kong's remarkable economic growth has also been due to its embrace of democracy and free markets. Although Hong Kong is not a full democracy, it is governed by the principle of one country, two systems, which allows the city to maintain a degree of autonomy and freedom. Additionally, Hong Kong has opened its markets to foreign investment and trade, allowing the city to benefit from global economic growth. In conclusion, both Israel and Hong Kong are examples of how democracy and free markets can foster economic growth. Examples for against democracies: South Korea, Japan, China, Singapore. China, South Korea, Singapore, and Japan are some of the most successful countries in the region who have achieved impressive economic growth without making democratic reforms. Let's start with China. The country has seen an unprecedented economic boom since the 1980s. It has been able to develop its economy and infrastructure without any democratic reforms. This is due to the fact that the Chinese government has been able to pursue a consistent and long-term economic policy. The government has also focused on increasing investment in infrastructure, education, and research and development, which has led to the country's impressive economic growth. South Korea is another example of a country that has grown and become developed without relying on democracy. The country has achieved rapid economic growth since the 1960s and has become one of the world's most advanced economies. This was due to the South Korean government's commitment to a strong export-oriented economic strategy, which has helped the country to become a major exporter of manufactured goods. Singapore is another East Asian country which has seen impressive economic growth without relying on democracy. The country has implemented a successful economic policy which has focused on increasing foreign investment, promoting free trade, and encouraging economic diversification. The Singaporean government has also invested heavily in infrastructure, education, and research and development, which has enabled the country to become one of the world's most prosperous economies. Finally, Japan is another East Asian country which has achieved impressive economic growth without democratic reforms. The Japanese government has been able to create a strong economy which has been driven by the country's strong export sector. The government has also invested heavily in infrastructure, education, and research and development, which has enabled the country to become one of the world's most advanced economies. So as we can see, East Asian countries like China, South Korea, Singapore, and Japan have been able to achieve impressive economic growth without relying on democracy. This is due to the fact that these countries have implemented strong economic policies which have focused on increasing investment in infrastructure, education, and research and development. What really matters? Inclusive institutions, low government corruption, incentives for innovation, and peace are more important in determining a country's economic growth than the type of government the country has. Inclusive institutions refer to the structures and procedures of a government that enable citizens to participate and have a say in the decisions made by the government. These structures and procedures are essential for economic growth because they ensure that the government is accountable to its citizens and is not just making decisions for its own benefit. Low government corruption is another factor that affects economic growth. Corruption is when a government official uses their position of power to enrich themselves or their friends and family. This can lead to a lack of trust in the government, which can lead to a lack of investment and economic growth. Incentives for innovation are also important for economic growth. Innovations are key for economic growth because they create new products and services, which can lead to new markets and more jobs. Governments can provide incentives for innovation by offering tax breaks, grants, and other incentives to businesses that innovate. Peace is an important factor for economic growth. When there are conflicts or wars in a country, it can lead to a lack of investment and economic growth. This is why it is important for governments to work towards creating a peaceful environment in order to foster economic growth.